Hey, good evening. Welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. I've just been filling out forms and stuff, and I wanted to know about qualifications and stuff like that. I would have to search very, very hard for qualifications. As rare as hen's teeth, I can tell you. I went to school at St Wilfrid's Secondary Modern School. I failed the tests to get into the grammar school, which was a much higher standard of education. But then my parents had always moved around, and so I went from one school to another and never quite got the continuity of moving from one class to another. And so what I laughingly call my education, I cobbled together from books and talking to other people who were very educated, and I learned to listen. Well, when I was in the army, I regret now that I could have actually extended my my regular or conventional education much further. I did start to take classes, and then I was so interested in music that I stopped doing that, and I concentrated on my music. I actually went in when I was 15 and a half into the army, and of course you can't do that now. I signed on for 6 years, which didn't start. That service didn't start until I was 18 years old. And that was the recruiting sergeant well, you're only signing on for 6 years, but of course it doesn't start until you're 18 years old. Like that. So that was one of the things there, and nobody heard it. We only heard him coughing. We never heard him say, "It doesn't start until you're 18 years old, you understand, before you sign." No, he didn't say that. So it doesn't start until you're 18 years old. Like that. And so I signed, and it didn't start until I was 18. After a year of hoping it would get better, I suddenly realized that this was as good as it would ever get. In fact, possibly the best it would ever get. And then started a very difficult few years of being in a situation that I really didn't want to be in, which I'd signed when I was just 15. Oh my God, I look at kids now, and could they sign for the equivalent of 8.5 years of their lives and do it when they're 15? I don't think so. But anyway, come 16, I was in Berlin with the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, and going into a Scottish regiment was quite a revealing experience for me. I was an English-born Irishman in a Scottish regiment. Work that one out. I never liked it, and I wasn't very good at hiding that fact. So I was quite a rebellious kid, and I went to Berlin because that's where the regiment was, and that's where the band is. I was in a regimental band. I never fired a gun in 8.5 years. So I went there. I went there for a while, and I had some good tuition there. There were some good musicians in that band, and tuition was available, and the bandmaster actually sent me to have trombone lessons from the principal trombone of the Berliner Philharmonic. I remember that very clearly, and we made a pledge. I would try to help him with his English, and he would try to help me with my trombone playing. But that didn't last long, and I got sent to Aberdeen, or Aberdeen, as the Scots would say, and I went to a boys' school there, because don't forget I was only 16. So I was sent to a boys' school. Not a very big boys' school, but quite an eventful time for me. I found my voice there. I found that what I had to say might be listened to, which it had never happened when I was at home. It was always, shut your gob, and children are supposed to be heard when they're spoken to, and not until. So, yeah, so now, in among my peers, it seemed to have changed. Well, we had quite a varied existence in that band of kids, all kids, and none of them particularly any happier with what they were doing than I was. And what did I learn? You would be surprised to know that I was actually in the Highland dancing team, and we danced the Highland fling, 4 of us together, and we also danced on the swords. And I remember very clearly that that was probably one of the worst experiences in the army. More fun to look back on now, but as always with embarrassing moments, that's what happens, isn't it? You get so embarrassed, you say, oh, I could have died, I wish I just wanted a hole to swallow me up. And then later you have great fun telling people about it. Well, my embarrassing experience was we went to a small British Legion, a little club, a British Legion club, a tiny little place, and they had a stage made up, but I think it was made up out of those delivery crates, you know, and they stacked them up, and then they put thin piece of plywood across the top, and that was the stage. Well, we duly, in all of our Highland gear, kilts and all, we marched onto the stage with our claymores, the big Scottish traditional sword, and we laid the swords down in a cross thing. Now normally it would be a sword and the scabbard, but we'd gone for the jugular, and we had managed to acquire the use at least of the 4 claymores, and we laid those down in the cross. And then you start doing this, and you go in and out of the cross, but you're jumping up and down like this, and as you're jumping up and down, it should be all solid stuff, but it wasn't. It was these bloody packing crates, and the more that we jumped, the swords were going like this, and we were trying to do our best. I don't remember anybody laughing, but I think if I'd been in the audience, I would have been laughing. But I don't know. You know how you manage to blot out those things which are the most painful? Well, I don't remember getting off the stage, but I'm sure that we did. I'm not sure how long we tried to do the Highland dancing with those swords that had the same idea, but that was our first and only gig as the boys' school dancing team. We never got any more offers after that. Packing crates or no. So we gave the claymores back, and that was that. I did learn to dance the Highland fling, which now I've forgotten, so don't ask me about it. I'm too embarrassed already. And we went on. Well, eventually I went to join the regiment, and I went to a place called Brentwood. And Brentwood was, well, the band itself was away in, I think, was it Denmark or Sweden? They had been invited to be part of some kind of do that was going on over there, and they'd gone. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go with them, so I think I arrived there too late, otherwise I probably would have gone. But what I did do at that time was, bearing in mind, now this is prior to my going to the boys' school, I hadn't yet been given the trombone to play. So I got there, and the band was taking part in the Woolwich tattoo. And in the Woolwich tattoo you have massed bands marching about and doing all of this stuff, you know. Well, they gave me an instrument to carry, and I don't know what I quickly learned that this is the kind of logic you get in the army. They gave me a bass, a tuba to carry. Like, I'm 16 years old and weigh about 130 pounds, and they give me a bloody tuba. What did they think of? Anyway, I did my best. It was nearly as big as me. And the band leader came out and saw it. He says, "Don't be talking nonsense. Give him a clarinet." So they gave me a clarinet, which I was supposed to hold like this. I mean, you've got the clarinet, right? And you're marching up and down. Nobody can see what you're doing. They don't know whether you're playing or not. Anyway, so I'm holding the clarinet up like this. Don't put it in my mouth, filthy thing. And anyway, later, so we marched up and down, and we finished the tattoo, and I went to hand back the clarinet, and the guy said to me, "Where's the mouthpiece?" Sorry, the what? He said, "Well, where's the mouthpiece?" "Where's the bloody mouthpiece, you piece of..." I didn't know it had a mouthpiece. "Well, what does it look like?" he said. Well, he told the director, the bandmaster, he said, "He's lost the mouthpiece." So anyway, he said, "Well, don't give him another one. let him walk about without a mouthpiece." And that's what I did for the rest of the tattoo. So then, back to the boys' school. So it wasn't a fun time at the boys' school either, but the time that I did have a great time was when I finally managed to get to Twickenham, and that is the School of Music, the military School of Music, called Kneller Hall. And Kneller Hall, I met my greatest teacher, and that was Bill Teskey, Professor Teskey to me, and he was the principal trombone of the BBC Philharmonic, and BBC Symphony Orchestra, sorry, and he used to get me tickets to go to see the orchestra play in Maida Vale, and I used to go to the BBC studios in Maida Vale and listen. And for a lot of the heavy stuff, I fell asleep. And for the other stuff, the lighter stuff, I was able to stay awake and try and learn something, which I did. But he was a fabulous teacher. He spent time with me. I used to persuade other guys if I could take their lesson, and if they were wasting his time and lessons, he would welcome me in the door and say, "Thank God, I thought it was Smith." Anyway, so I did very well there, and I met lots of wonderful guys. My best friend there was Howard, and Howard was he was one of those people that you couldn't help liking him. Everybody liked. He was a lovable person, and Howard. Things happened to Howard. He was one of those guys who he didn't speak with a lisp, but he had a funny mouth that looked like he should speak with a lisp, and he wore glasses. And I still remember him so fondly. We just had, everything was funny. When Howard was around, everything was funny. When he told me that when he first came in the army, he was picked up at the station, I think, with a load of other guys, and the army bus brought them to the camp. And he had done his military training, so he joined up, and then he had been taken to the camp. Now, they didn't know who they were, so the sergeant has a list of people. He's got a list like this, and he goes, Jefferson, right, there, Smith, Jones, and he would go like that, and people would say, yes sir, and he'd say, yes what? Yes, Sergeant. So when it came to Howard, he looked at Howard and said, "What's your name?" So Howard said to him, "Howard, sir." Howard? So he's looking down his list like this. "Are you sure that you're in the army, son?" I mean, he's looking at Howard with his glasses and his funny mouth. He said, "I don't have a Howard down here." So anyway, then for quite a number of minutes they march up and down and ask this person and that person and everything. And then he says, "Howard, come here. Give me your full name." So Howard said to him, "Well, it's Howard Elridge, sir." "Elridge? That's your name, you bloody fool! You don't tell me your first name. You think we're going to be on first name terms, you idiot?" He told, when the sergeant, he was such a lovely boy. He said, "What's your name?" And he said, "Howard, sir," because he thought that the man wanted to know his first name. He also played the trombone, and he had great difficulty with the trombone. He just couldn't seem to work it out. And he used to ask me questions like, when you put the mouthpiece to your, I mean, here's a mouthpiece, look, we're talking now. So when you put the mouthpiece to your mouth, and you put it, do you go like this? Or do you go like that? Just put the bloody thing to your face and blow it. I was a very bad trombone teacher because for some strange reason, even though I chose it as a second choice, I wanted to play the trumpet. I'd seen somebody called Eddie Calvert and the Golden Trumpet, and I wanted to play the trumpet. They said, "No, you can't." And so everybody said, "Play the trombone." So I did as I was told, and I played the trombone, and it just happened that I had an aptitude for it. Howard didn't. He had to think about everything. When you put it, does it, and you put it on your mouth like this and go, you did all of that, and it still sounded terrible. So we used to talk and we used to laugh, and we used to talk, and there was Timothy, and Timothy was a terribly intelligent man, and fun, and very proper, almost well spoken, and he played the bass trombone, and he had a magnificent bass trombone, and he was the master of the embarrassing moment. He came in after being out on a Saturday, and he came in and we're talking on Sunday when we're all practicing, and he was telling us that he'd been to see a movie the night before. He said, "But I walked around Richmond. I walked around Richmond and I got quite bored, so I went and had an Indian." He said, "And I had a real, I think it's a Vindaloo." He said, "I had a Vindaloo, and oh my God," he said, "it was hot." He said, "And afterwards it was hot and spicy." He said, and I had a lot." He said, "I thought I'll go and see a movie." So he said, "I went to the movies, and he said, I'm in the movies and I can feel it fermenting in my stomach." It was the Vindaloo. It was calling my name, and it was getting harder and harder to contain myself, he said. And then he said, the worst possible thing happened. He said, I farted. He said, I couldn't not fart. So, he said, and it was a stinker. He said, even I couldn't stand it. He said, and people for 3 or 4 around me were going, "Oh, gee, what, oh my God." Of course, he didn't own it. He didn't go up and say, "Sorry, it was me." He just remained quiet and looked around the same as everybody else did. And so anyway, that it faded away, as it does in time, but he couldn't hold it, and he farted again. And this time it was worse. And people were going, oh, for God's because they were silencers, and he was stinking the place out. Well, he said, I just didn't know what to do. He said, but in the end, he said, I had no choice. I had to go to the toilet. He said, so I stood up like this, and with my head bowed, I walked out like that. He said, and a woman with a very fruity English accent says, I should bloody well think so. He said it was so embarrassing. But now he was laughing. That's how the embarrassing moments are. But I've talked enough about embarrassing moments, and I'm just looking at my coffee, and a mosquito has committed suicide in there. Damn it, why didn't you go somewhere else to do that? When you think about Noah and taking 2 of everything, why didn't he just not take the mosquitoes? That's what I want to know. Well, thank you for listening to my reverie of the army. It wasn't as much fun for me as it might have been for you. This is Foreigner in the Philippines. Bye for now.